There's the little red square above your head. So good morning, Friday, February 6th, 2026. Back in House Transportation. Thank God it's Friday. Expense report Friday. Bill introduction Friday for us. And first, we have representative from Pittsford that the seat of a well-known, fully established member of this committee for several years. So, Representative Millay, welcome, and we're here to hear your bill or your introduction of your bill. And I'm glad to get a nod to your former
Yes.
from your
Yes.
district. I'm sure he's watching.
Well, thank you. For the record, Representative Alicia Millay from Pittsford, Rutland 8, Pittsford and Proctor. So my predecessor, former member in this committee, who's also my mentor, had started some work on covered bridge protection. We have 4 covered bridges in Pittsford. There was once 7. One of which was destroyed due to arson. Another one was kind of a victim of expansion of Route 7 work, and the time, modernization. But I reached out to, if you see, there's quite a few people that co-sponsored. I was able to get a lot of signatures from people. I had a list of the people with the most covered bridges in their towns. And so everybody that I approached was really excited that there was going to be even more expansions on covered bridge protections. So this bill essentially is in 2 sections, which is providing assistance to municipalities so that they know what their legal rights are as far as weight limits and height limits and things like that. I know it was brought up to me from the president of the Covered Bridge Society that even when some of the towns where their bridges were being hit quite often were hesitant to put up specific signage or because they weren't sure if it came up against state and federal road regulations. So this kind of contains that education component so that towns will know what they can and can't do, as well as educating them on grants that would be available for whether putting up cameras, because a lot of times there's a lot of hit and runs. And then you're just working on your municipal insurance instead of being able to go after the driver of what are often box trucks. And then the second piece is enhanced penalties for destruction of the bridges. Intentional harms and including arson. So it doubles the current penalties. So that whatever current penalty for like just any bridge, this would double it for a covered bridge because of the historical nature of the bridges, because we used to have, I think, 150 plus covered bridges in Vermont. We now have just under 100, and once they're gone, and they're big economic drivers in our state as well as just being, beautiful, but, they bring a lot of people to the area. You see full buses of people, pulled over, taking pictures at the covered bridges, and then they go and spend money in those towns. So that's about it there. I would have liked to have gone further. I know I was kind of cautioned against adding any money ask in the bill, which is why this provides technical assistance only for municipalities to then go find their own funding. But I did just want to, I'll send this around. Your committee system, help me get a clean copy. I was having a hard time finding a clean copy on what sites that didn't have all these pop-up ads. But Lyndonville did paired up with their local school, and the welding students actually created this beautiful barrier, which has actually been hit twice, but saved the bridge. So in an ideal world, I would love for every town that had a covered bridge to have access to funding so that they could have those constructed. But again, that's in here just is providing that assistance from VTrans. I know the Covered Bridge Society has stepped forward and would really love to be kind of a conduit to helping to let towns know what they can and can't do as far as road signage, and then helping them find applicable grants to build these barriers to protect the bridges.
Representative Wells, and then. did you have your-
Yeah, that one in Miller's Run Bridge in Lindenville, that's kind of a model.
Yes,
Even though it got
exactly. Yep.
wall up,
Yep.
it took the hit.
You're right, it did what it was supposed to do.
I'm disappointed you brought that picture in because I took the time to put an artist rendition of the bridge
Yeah,
here. But your picture's better.
certainly, Mr.
But it really,
I know,
it
really.
really, yeah, second grade art class. And they did a heck of a job. It looks great. You
Yeah.
can see it a long ways away. I
Yeah.
can't imagine there's still a hitting yet, but it'll take the wall up. And
Right,
so the
exactly.
bridge is fine. I always take that to get to LI.
Yeah.
Off Interstate 91. Yeah.
So that is the model, because some bridges have done the headache bars which are right behind the fascia or fascia boards.
Mhm.
They work so that the truck doesn't go all the way through the bridge, but it's obviously still, every time you're hitting a bridge or you're affecting the structural integrity of the bridge. So this is a much better.
Be nice if local schools in their district, if you got one in Rutland or Pittsburgh or wherever, that they couldn't do what they did and had their
Yeah,
kids build it as a project.
that's why this is extra awesome, I think, because they were able to pair up. I mean, it was such like a great thing for those welding students to be able to work on, you know? So. So,
Representative White, and then Representative Casey, and then Representative Powell.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Malay. This
Big
is,
interest.
yeah, I think a great step to protecting our bridges. So I guess a couple questions.
Mhm.
Assistance from municipalities to protect their bridges. Are you thinking about like maybe best practices for protecting historic bridges? Because I think that example that you shared, I'm so happy you brought that, because I've heard other members mention that.
yep, okay,
My district has many covered bridges
Yeah.
as well, and we have had much damage, and we don't have anything like that, and I
Mhm.
think that's a really great solution. So, I like the idea of maybe a best practices for historic bridges.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether VLCT should be part of that conversation.
yeah, don't we have that? I think that's actually, not,
Is that in the-
yeah, it is, Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns. So, yeah, V-Trans, Secretary of Commerce and Community Development, Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns. And then other stakeholders at the discretion of.
And you mentioned that's done by some welding students, so are they at the CTE? Because that's a great.
Yeah, the Linden Institute, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And lastly, so historic preservation, does that come in at all? Or,
So I think I think only on state-owned covered bridges, which most are not.
okay.
But that's probably something that I should find out, yeah, make sure that that's true.
Great, thank you, but
Yes.
I'm excited about this bill.
Is there any information like what the average cost of installing one of them barriers in is? Anybody know?
This one, do you remember?
I know they're not
One
looking,
is-
but I was just curious.
Yeah. No, I think this one, say, get the number wrong, I should have had that. I feel like this one was like $70,000, is that, yeah.
That's kids do it. or
Well, and
the
that's
students do
what,
it.
yeah, but I think it's just maybe the materials, I think that's the thing,
Foundation.
yeah, see very quickly if this is, has that in there. I'll have to look and get back to you. I don't see it. It's not jumping out in this article. There's a lot of articles on this though, in general. But I'll look at yeah.
So the
average
opportunities, you think the opportunities exist to get some of these up without public funds? Well,
So there is grant money out there. So I think that we would have to, so the Covered Bridge Society, which really should have been in this, as one of those other stakeholders, would know,
Yeah.
they would know exactly what grants were out there specifically for this sort of thing. And Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns should also have, great guidance on that because they're the ones paying out,
you know,
whenever a bridge is hit, so they will know. So yeah, there is some more specific information that we'll, need to get.
Representative Pouch.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Two questions. One is, these just fall under municipal bridges, like any structure that would be in mind that isn't a covered bridge. We have some here, but,
Yeah.
so there are the structured grants that, we know there isn't enough money in there to cover all the structures that need it, but over time they do. I'm assuming these would qualify for it, but I don't know if the additional barrier would qualify. Do you know?
You mean the V-Trans structures grants?
Yes.
Okay, I
wonder if anybody's tried to get something through that,
yeah, that's a good question.
whether it would qualify.
Right, because,
And continuing on the, that it's just a municipal structure. I'm assuming V-Trans does the inspection of them like they do other structures. That would be good to know. I'm assuming they do. They're supposedly inspect every
That's
one,
what we hear.
right?
yeah,
Required to inspect we just heard that testimony
Yeah.
recently.
And I wonder if they have special criteria on a covered bridge. And then. Question was gonna be,
You'll come back?
Yeah, I'll come back to it if I remember.
No problem.
yeah,
Representative Fallon?
Yeah, first of all, I love this bill. Love it, love it, love it. And I just wanted to suggest that the insurance angle may be a productive way to go.
okay,
That, the reason I say that is we just heard some a presentation yesterday on infrastructure writ large and how mitigation is going to be going forward a very valuable thing because private insurers are, as the climate is changing and we have more unpredictable weather patterns that are wreaking havoc on our infrastructure, private insurance is going to be the way that most of that gets paid.
okay,
So there's just not enough money, public funds from any source to cover that. So so translating the value of mitigation into a lower premium is sort of an emerging issue for states to figure out how to help municipalities do. If that makes sense.
yeah,
Did I say that right?
yeah, I think,
Basically, Phil was there.
when
too.
municipalities, yeah, when municipalities, for example, take mitigation efforts for fire prevention. It really helps if it translates into lower insurance rates. And in it's working in some spots, but the idea is to like, wait a minute here, not all neighborhoods are the same for fire protection. If a particular neighborhood has done a whole bunch of work ahead of time, then you would expect their insurance rate is less. In the same way, if your home is located close to a fire plug or the fire station, the closer you are, the less your insurance is.
right,
So it's that same concept.
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Translating this into value that
Yeah.
then results in, a lower insurance premium,
Mhm.
fingers crossed.
right, okay, yeah.
I did remember my other question if I can. So,
Sue.
you mentioned VLCT insures the bridges. Is that true for all structures in municipal structures?
So I
didn't think
only,
it was.
so I only know for Pittsford, and so one of our covered bridges, the state does own. So,
Okay.
but our VLCT, the insurance covers the other three. Of course, the one the state owns is actually only it's foot traffic only.
Okay, yeah, so I guess that's a question. And
That's,
the committee knew, if you have a structure, the municipality has a structure. I didn't think there was any insurance on it. So if something happens, you don't go to a VLCT to get reimbursement. I don't know.
So we can delve.
Maybe it's just a structure that on top, like a
that's you.
a barn or a house. It's a structure owned by the municipality.
Mm.
So maybe that's it, but not actually the bridge, but the building on top.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
That might be why there's insurance, but okay, be interesting. to
Yeah,
find out.
yeah.
I think all these questions would be good.
Yep.
before you get questioned on the floor.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This is a lot of great feedback.
So, anybody else? Any other, I will, I'm happy to take more. I have had some conversations with the agency.
Okay,
As you very much point out, there's very, very few state-owned and state-managed covered bridges. Most of them are on municipal roads. And so the agency doesn't necessarily, and I won't speak for them other than based on some of the conversations they've heard, doesn't necessarily see that as their role to spearhead this project. Although
Okay.
they certainly view that they support it. I have had some other conversations based on this that suggest that the CTE angle, the economic community development, the commerce committee, and an assistance from the agency of transportation would be a model they would suggest. So
okay,
what I'm feeling like is that we should explore some of these more answers and probably some more information, really make sure we understand it, and start perhaps bringing an approach to that committee.
okay,
I've even further had some conversations of that when you start talking about CTEs and tourism and historic preservation, that the attention in that committee is pretty high.
Okay.
And with our interest and support potentially, that the next big question, as you mentioned, of funds and the idea of a grant program and work on this type of thing gets far more receptive when you tie in the CTE angle than the tourism angle.
okay,
So I've had, obviously we talked about it, so I've been doing some poking around and trying to find a place for this to potentially work, and there are interests in other. There's a lot of people who want to be support, and what we're looking for is somebody that will want to be a point. I am not familiar with the Covered Bridge Society, and I don't know how many members or where they're headquartered at and who represents them, and if they ever come anywhere near in this direction,
yeah,
might be somebody we want to hear from.
Yeah. yeah, I'll reach out to they're actually from Representative Casey's area. That's where they're located.
You had quite a few sponsors on the bill as well, so I'm not sure how many that was, but it's quite a few. I can count them up, but I
Yeah,
don't know if we know how many there were.
I didn't count either. I just, like I said, I went after everybody who's got a lot of covered bridges. I had a list from the president of the Covered Bridge Society, gave me the list of all the reps who had she gave me the towns with all the most covered bridges. And so I was able to find the reps,
We'd love to see that
districts.
list.
Okay,
Yeah.
See that list.
all right.
In full disclosure, I grew up in Brandon, not more than a mile down at the bottom of my street.
Sanderson
So
Bridge.
we've had a lot of ups and downs. It's amazing the impact when one of them goes down
I
that
know.
it has on the community. So I'm glad to be in a spot to try to find a helpful way of looking at it. I particularly like that CTE angle and seeing those kids under there and having, they'll be able to tell that story of being involved in saving that bridge for the rest of their
Mhm.
days, and they actually had a useful skill in doing it. So Representative White, you had a question
Just
or comment?
a comment question. If you're looking for case studies of historic bridges that have been repeatedly hit by box trucks and to get at the insurance story, the Waitsfield Covered Bridge, which I believe is the first covered bridge in the state, has had numerous incidents over the last year, maybe 10 years of being damaged, repaired. So they might, if you're looking for additional testimony, I'm sure we could find someone there too.
Great. Thank you.
Represent, thank you for this. Is $1,000 all we can catch them for? I mean, is there some reason why statutorily we can only charge them $1,000?
I don't think so. Maybe we could make it.
I would suggest it to be onerous.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to come up with a number. We essentially just doubled
What it was.
what's for, kind of any other bridge.
You know, I
Always
think,
in judiciary, I have a lot of experience and piece on what's reasonable and what's not, and what's a lot, there's a whole issue of constitutionality that they deal with in that we don't, but they have input on that piece. So were you all set?
Yeah.
Yeah, more? Representative Rowland?
No, following on Rep. Teaser's point, I think, there are many intangibles to, cost to the loss of one of these. And, that could be starting point. What would that be? Maybe that would help. Maybe back up, for a more robust fee penalty, whatever that would be. I mean, it's a starting point.
Representative Case?
I just wanted to speak to a little tradition and it's kind of lighthearted. Whenever me and my wife go across the bridge, she makes me stop halfway and give her a peck on the cheek.
Oh.
That's right.
It's a little farmer's thing.
I suspect on the covered bridge, it's a little easier than it is on 89.
Traffic's different. Yeah. She'll go like that. This when we're getting onto the bridge, it's yes. Here you go, bud.
And the amount of people that beep when they go through, it's just like everybody's got their little thing
Yeah.
they do at covered bridges and
Yeah.
they're just special.
So that's an example of the tremendous intangibles.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Sounds like we have a lot of interest and a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Pieces. So thank you very much. Anybody have any other last words? But I would say thank you very much for bringing it ahead and bringing it forward and, we'll talk again.
Well,
All right, great. Thank you.
This year.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and I'll get some answers to all these great questions. This was a lot of good feedback, so I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a
Yeah.
wonderful weekend.
Thanks.
See?
Which I said hi.
You're welcome.
And we will move on to our next agenda item, and Representative Burke is gonna switch seats.
Okay. Might be some,
Or do you have some other,
there might be somebody else coming in.
well, we can,
Just wait a few minutes. Do you want me to go first?
if you would like to, we can do that.
That would be.
Is that a problem, Representative Burke? Are you comfortable with that?
Fine.
You want to wait? You want us to wait for till 11? We can do that. We can adjourn till 11. We can
Whatever wants to do.
have a chat, or we can put Representative Lally up and then switch back. I'm pretty flexible on Friday morning here.
It's up to you, Mr. Chair.
We might as well
Okay.
push ahead then.
All right.
Great. Representative Lally is going to present H 34. An act relating to traffic calming measures for village centers and pedestrian and bicycle safety.
Right. Good morning, everybody, from my different position here. So, the bill is H 834, and I wanted to begin by telling you what inspired me to introduce this bill. I want Vermont to have more prosperous communities. And prosperous communities all have one thing in common: safe streets. Safe streets are slow streets, places where people shop, run into friends and neighbors, meet up for coffee and meals. By providing the physical framework for the social and economic life of a community's inhabitants, safe streets create well-being, belonging, and agency. This bill proposes a toolbox of ideas to make it easier, faster, less costly for all state-designated communities to have these advantages. So now into the bill. It does 4 things. None of them cost any money. So just wanted to start with that. So the first thing it does is it establishes a process so that even little villages can have the right to set a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. More local control of vehicle speeds. It helps with livability, safety, and fiscal productivity. At present, our law only affords this for the larger places, which have more capacity to pursue and adopt downtown designation, which is called Step 3 under the new land use designations. And for example, my town of Shelburne doesn't qualify for this. So it kind of gives you a sense for the really narrow range of places that get to have sidewalks and bicycle paths and things like that more easily than other places do.
Yeah, so Heinsberg Village is under the new Act 250. Will have that downtown.
You're going for downtown designation, yeah.
So based on that, would that allow the town to request 25 miles an hour?
Sure, yes, it would,
Once that goes,
once that goes through. So this would make it so that you didn't have to do that.
yeah,
Because I mean, you took testimony yesterday that it's a very narrow universe of places that can have this. And there are only 5 or 6 more that under this
existing.
universally large, this huge land use transformation that we're doing are going to be included in that. So it's not, if you think about all the places and settings in Vermont, that 5 or 6 more is not a lot, So, we keep hearing that they can't meet the demand, the need is far greater. So this is a starting point to kind of have a little bit more of a level playing field. So my bill would bring it all the way down to what's called step 1 communities, which is the littlest places that fall under the designation program. It's just giving them a bite of that apple, basically.
And today, I don't think it's even possible for our town to request anything less than the 30, which it is now.
It's true. Now, this would not, just to clarify, this would not say that, okay, now you get access to resources to put sidewalks and that sort of thing.
Right.
That is still, that's a separate problem that we have to solve somehow. But this would at least say you get to set a 25 mile per hour speed limit. And in a lot of rural places, that is the most important thing that they want. Safety is the starting point for everything. So it would give them that ability. And I think that will start to, in the places that I serve in my day job as a regional planner, this would help to create a more sense of agency about what more they could do, as opposed to just kind of giving up, So it's just making it's just making it a little less, reducing a little of that friction that's there right now.
What's the speed limit in Shelburne now?
It is now 35 on Route 7 going through the village, which is too fast. And like Rep. Pouch said, we are also pursuing downtown designation. But it only became something that the community saw the advantages of doing with the recent land use changes. We have not been able to politically get the town to pursue downtown designation until now. So that the land use changes have made it easier to do that. So we're very grateful for that. But I just, I think if we want to have people living in our, towns and villages in Vermont, we have hundreds of them. And we have success in too few places in the state. And, jobs and opportunities are concentrated in very few limited places. Then we've got to start looking at the connection, I think, between transportation and land use policy and how we can create the conditions for somebody wanting to invest in these rural places.
Westmore wants to do the same thing. They want to go to 25.
Yeah. So.
Representative Peterson.
So, thank you. Proctor has 25 miles an hour. Why? I mean, I'm hearing that you can't do that. But then
I'm not sure. It may be on a town road. It may be.
in the village, the whole village is 25 miles an hour.
That's great. They may be have a designation status. I'm not sure how they're doing. That would be interesting to know more about that. Yeah,
Okay.
because that's not the case in most places. Yeah. So
You're coming out.
I know.
What, you're up.
3 more things to go.
I just want to clarify, and I know Representative Couch has already asked me about this, but, okay, so currently, if you are a designated downtown, you can go down to 25 miles per hour.
Yes.
But this is allowing those towns that are not, do not have that designation to go down to 25 miles per hour.
Yes,
If, if your town is on a town highway, or state highway, like Route 100, would that allow?
yes,
Okay,
yes, it would allow that. It would also allow the town to determine the location where it wanted to have 25 miles per hour. And this could be a combination of state highway, town highway. In other words, they get to look at their setting and decide what's best for them, what meets their needs, rather than, kind of this sort of mother may I thing that we have right now, where the answer is often no.
and what is and is this connected to the mapping, the tier 1A, 1B designated growth area?
It's connected to the map designated area. So this would apply to, so it's confusing. Right now we have village centers and then designated downtowns, and that we're changing this to step 1, step 2, and step 3 communities. It's all linked to the tiers. And all of this is being implemented, sort of approved and implemented as we speak. So we're kind of have one foot in the old world and one foot in the new world, and it's a little complicated.
Okay.
But this would say that all the places that are recognized under the designation program, which in my understanding of the law are places where we intend to have housing, productivity, new businesses, jobs, all of bike paths, all that stuff, they would have the opportunity to set that speed limit to 25 miles per hour. And there's a lot more to this that the mechanisms. Damien came up with some very interesting approaches that, if there's interest in the committee, we could kind of take a deeper dive into how this would actually work in practice.
And I would just
Yeah.
say that 2 of the 5 towns I represent are desperate for something like this. Yeah. So thank you.
Is it okay for me to go on to the other things that the bill does at this point? Okay. All right. The next thing it does is it clarifies the current law in 2 instances. No parking 20 feet of a mid-block crosswalk. So loading bike parking would be okay if there was a local ordinance that said, yeah, we're fine with that in our, so it's not saying you can't have anything there. But again, the town would get some say in how this worked. And the point of this is to create more visibility at mid-block crosswalks. And in a lot of our villages and downtowns, you have very linear conditions that, not every place is built around a green or something like that. So the mid-block crosswalk is like the only way you're going to get across Main Street, So, because we don't have system of blocks and things and intersections. So, so making those as safe as they can be is really important. So these were 2 recommendations from Local Motion, which has done a lot of studying of this. And so I included them into my bill. And then the other thing is that it would prevent use of the center lane when you have a 3-lane road for passing. And we learned again from Local Motion that that is not something that is illegal currently in Vermont. So, that's number 2 of the things that the bill does. And then the third thing that it would do is it would establish a working group to look holistically at the range of barriers to increasing the ability to have bicycle and pedestrian facilities in our towns and villages. So we've heard that, the way that NEPA is applied has been a barrier, and they're working on some of that. There are other things too. And so the recommendation was from the RPCs was to work with the LCT and the agency on just understand sort of the universe of barriers, not just, to try and see if there could be a bunch of things that could be changed that are problems now going forward, or recommendations on changes. And why is this important? This will make very scarce public dollars go further, and help us lower our emissions and, have walkable, productive places. And then the fourth thing that the bill would do is explore opportunities to make Class 1 highway status more appealing and more compelling, so more communities will consider adopting this. This is a provision that was inspired by a very fascinating recent study that was commissioned by AARP, and they had Smart Growth work with the agency on Class 1. Everybody wants Class 1 to become something that is kind of a more normal thing to have in Vermont. It reduces costs for the agency, but it only makes sense for municipalities to do it if, honestly, the juice is worth the squeeze, right? So like we saw how the chair's community decided to go ahead and pursue that because of the fabulous lakeside location and the opportunities to probably have pretty significant grand list development in that location would probably far exceed the cost of taking on the maintenance of that stretch of highway. I'm guessing this. That's just my kind of thought as when we went on our field trip and saw the situation. So that's it. That's what it would do.
Does it cost anything?
None of this stuff costs anything.
Switching the signs will, right? Or is that gonna be the town's paying for that?
Switching the signs for,
35 to 25.
if we're able to do that on if it's part of a Class 1, the state would do that. And then the towns would be responsible for their portion of it. Yeah. So I think that would be, not a huge expense.
Representative White?
And so the switching to Class 1 highway, so that basically allows a town to take over that section of highway.
Yes.
And from what I remember, when we discussed this last year regarding the chair's area, it's St. Albans, right? St. Albans, that was adopting a mile or so back from the state. But I believe there was some language that the state was still going to plow. Which I think is a bit of a barrier. Like I think about our town on sections of Route 100, which the state is plowing right now. So, if that could be kind of a common consideration that the state would continue to plow through the Class 1 highway designation and not just stop there because it's.
Well, that's actually, as my understanding is, that's one of the sort of challenges right now is that it's a sort of all or nothing proposition. And a lot of places are not in a position to be able to take on that amount of maintenance. So what could be done about this? This is the point of this study would be to sort of look at it. Is there a middle path? Is there something where you can be kind of like Class 1 curious and maybe start down that pathway and then kind of, adopt it eventually? Is there some kind of like a ramp, an on-ramp to use our sector's parlance to, get there in the future? Because, there's some really clever ideas. I remember hearing a number of years ago in Barrie, when they put their state, the changes to their state highway, which I think are Class 1 through that section of their downtown. I'm not sure about it, but I think they are. But anyway, they have mid-block crosswalks and parking. And you guys have probably been there. It's really nice. And how are they going to keep that plowed? So they actually came up with a standard where they designed the curb radius around the mid-block crosswalk to based on their snowplows. I mean, so there are some very clever ways to do this kind of stuff. And V-Trans, is constantly upgrading their equipment, and the plows come with these, telescoping, changeable, front end plow things, so I think with a little bit of thought in this, there are a lot of places in this country that deal with snow in the winters, and they have thriving downtowns and with parking and crosswalks and all the sort of clutter of a very successful, vital, pedestrian environment that's full of shops and businesses and things like this. And, I think there are ways around this. Do I know what those are? Can I speak to what those are now? I cannot. So that's the point is just getting everybody together and working on this and see what we can come up with that works in our rural state with all of our many challenges, capacity and everything else.
Yeah, it's to comment, but to build on it. I mean, and I may have mentioned this, I've mentioned this a couple of times where, again, a town like Heinsberg would love the state to come and say, hey, here are some options for you to consider to, slow traffic, make it safer, whatnot. And, those conversations just aren't happening because unless we take the whole thing over, and we had a study, RPC did a scoping study of here's what we could do with 116 in the village if we were to take it over. But the cost of taking it over and, street lighting and all that, those costs just were, but the ideas of what we could do, these simple little bump outs and different things to sort of slow traffic, were not that expensive. And, even if the state said, hey, it's continuing to be a state road, but here are some things you could do. And it's a 50-50 split, or even I think the town would take that on. So this conversation, having this, I think is really important.
Well, I think it's going to be key to the financing of a lot of these opportunities. And, we have the CHIP program. There's a lot of, there's the treasurer's, is it 10% for Vermont program, which is, a sort of CHIP for little teeny weeny rural places. There's a lot of thought going into the financing of this. So it just seemed timely to introduce the transportation side of it into the argument and see if this could be a win-win, because, this is something the agency is really wanting to make work. And I know they've been frustrated that, we're sort of kind of going in the opposite direction, I believe. So. All right.
Other questions? I can't help but go down a history lane of things that sort of this idea that we're going to now, we have to do budget wise and money wise and mindset wise, find a way for the commerce that needs to get through this town to deliver in the next town. That was the focus for a long, long time, was about how do you move the traffic as quickly as possible through to get where they're going. To a major history that was bypasses was going to be built. Land was secured and right of ways all the way up and down Route 7 from the north to the south, sort of like the effort to get people on the interstate in the east that they did. There is still right of way that you can identify entire length of Route 7 that was all secured back in the 60s, in the 70s to bypass from all the way back at Pittsburgh and Brandon. Vergennes is the only one that really got built. There was a bypass around Middlebury. There's the land you can still identify if you go on Google Earth and follow the patterns, if you know where it is. It's all was carved out. And now we are abandoning any major, almost any build or any rebuild in our network. And we're trying to find ways to coexist that effort to move that commerce and come through the small town and make it more livable. But at one time, it was all about getting around the towns and coming from Middlebury up through. Like I said, Vergennes is the only one that really got built. All the rest of them still exist on a map. somewhere, but anyway, I appreciate your time. Anybody else got any other questions or comments on it? And Molly, this are fired up again, Burke, are you, is this you're part of our private guest is with us now? Is that part of what you were waiting for or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should just outlaw cars.
The experts in there.
Really should, be a lot safer. Well, that's what you guys want.
It's just that. So now we're in another bill presentation, moving back to the one that was on the list, H 766. An act relating to local option tax on gasoline and diesel sales. Representative Burke moving chairs, just like Representative Wiley's.
My seatmate here.
It's all yours.
Representative Molly Burke of Brattleboro. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee for listening to this. I brought H 766 here because my town, usually before we come back to the legislature, the town select board wants to meet with local representatives to sort of give their opinion about things that would be helpful to introduce in legislature for towns. And we're very happy to hear that, their list. And one of the things on their list was this, local option gas tax, because our town, like many, is suffering deeply from tax increases and from lack of funding. And trying to, there was a consideration even recently to get rid of trash collection and have people do it themselves, just to save money. So I said I would be happy to bring this forward. Seemed like a reasonable idea, and I have. And it's so basically, it's sort of tacking on to the local option on page 2 of the bill, talks about the ability, existing statute to the legislative body of the municipality by majority vote can recommend the voters that they implement a 1% sales tax, a 1% meals and alcoholic beverages tax, a 1% rooms tax, and additionally, so those are 3 possibilities. And additionally, a 1 cent, not percent, tax upon each gallon of gasoline, motor fuel sold or delivered by a distributor within the town, and a 1 cent tax on each gallon of diesel. This was really to capture, we have about 10 gas stations in Brattleboro, a lot of tourist traffic going through, and seemed like a way to sort of get some more money for town services. Now I'm finding, and with the that the way that it's set up is probably not that it's problematic the way the legislation is written to have collected by DMV, and according to our stellar fiscal helper, fiscal professional, Chris Root, it would be akin to sort of setting up a whole new tax system. So the issue is, how can we make this happen? Receive the benefit of these, especially tourist traffic going through the town, and get some more money for the town without having to spend a whole lot of money setting up some new tax system. So could we? And so I think that is the issue that I would like to be able to see if we could get some testimony on. And I think this is something that other communities, I know other communities are interested in this option as well.
Representative Tomlinson.
I'm curious if, can I ask questions of?
They would have the option of whether they chose to answer or not.
Question.
But for those of you who are newer on the committee, who we're pointing at was the Logan before Logan, before he moved on to
Yeah, moved up here.
greener pastures. I'm okay with it if Mr. Root is okay with it.
I was curious if there are any, on initial review, if there are, or what alternatives there might be to the way it's structured that would not require such a,
The cursor joint fiscal, I think the Representative Burke, I think excellently summed up my sort of concern when I initially read this was that, excuse me, right now, DMV collects the fuel taxes, the tax department does everything else related to local option taxes. And right now, the way DMV collects the fuel taxes, they don't do it at the retail point of sale, they do it upstream at the distributor level. You should hear from DMV on what kind of operational issues there may be and as well as the fuel distributors for them now having to track what municipality they're delivering the gallons to assess this, because right now the fuel taxes, you pay the tax based on gallons that are going into Vermont. It's not being tracked based on the municipality that you're making that delivery to. So we have no way of knowing like how many gallons of fuel were delivered within the town of Brattleboro. It makes it even more complicated when you just deal with local option taxes writ large, because our zip codes and our municipal boundaries do not correspond to each other. So it's actually a pretty significant administrative lift for tax to run the local option tax system. Getting to your question directly, Representative, right now the local option tax system is based on sales, rooms, or meals and alcohol. Those are the three different things you can do. And the way the tax department collects it is it's essentially an additional line on the forms for those existing tax types. So the easiest thing to do from an administrative perspective, and again, I'm not speaking for DMV or tax, you should hear from them, is to not create an all new tax type or an all new filing requirement on people if you can maybe piggyback off of an existing filing system. And one of the examples that comes to mind is jet fuel is taxed totally separate from this. It's subject to the sales tax. And the way tax collects that is, the handful of people who pay that, they file a sales tax return and they also file a one pager that goes with it that is just specific to jet fuel and natural gas that they sold. And there's like a line to be like, since it's a percentage base, just add an extra percentage for the local option tax. So if you can do a way to sort of piggyback on existing tax scheme, I hate using that word scheme, an existing tax system, it's easier to administer, and there can be some pretty sizable upfront costs for starting an all new tax type. And at a cent per gallon, statewide, a cent on gas is about 2.8 million. On diesel, it's around 600,000. So, do the math on what that might translate to any given town. It just may not amount to that much money.
but 1 cent is proposed in this bill, but it could be different than that.
Right, I can only comment on what's.
Could be a percentage.
Right, I'm just trying to confirm that there's nothing in like statute related to local option taxes that limits the percentage or amount. The others are set at 1%. This would be 1 cent per gallon.
So 1 cent, not 1%.
Right.
This would be changing that statute, so.
Right, okay. And that proposal to kind of piggyback off the other filing system, I'm just trying to understand, would that be able to align with, because that's also a local options tax or on the municipal level for jet fuel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's only two municipalities
Right.
that this even applies to, South Burlington and Mount Berlin. But that's just an example of how. it's kind of works. Using space.
Representative Couch, and then.
I guess question for Mr. Root. Could you remind us what the overhead is presently for the gas tax, gas and diesel tax?
Ooh, I don't have an exact number for you, but it is very low. The gas and diesel tax is very administratively efficient to collect.
I thought we were told it's about 3% to collect it. And
That,
it's 97% roughly. It's up in the high
that
nineties.
sounds very reasonable.
So potentially, if you wanted to provide more funding for municipalities, you could up the gas tax and diesel tax. Up, a penny, 2 pennies, whatever it would be, and earmark those directly to municipalities. That wouldn't really cost, that wouldn't have this problem that we're talking about here of trying to set up a brand new system of collecting.
It wouldn't really
taxes.
change the way business is done in terms of remitting taxes and collecting.
Thank you.
You mean just raise it for the municipalities that wanted it?
Raise it.
Or in general?
If you.
You're talking about raising the gas
You have to
tax.
Have a whole new system and, all the money raised could then potentially be used for municipality road services, better grants, the formula funding in those areas that go directly to municipalities, which is state dollars, primarily.
Representative Casey and then Representative Keiser.
I don't know much if you, if you guys sell down Brattleboro, but I can't imagine it's not very much. Yeah, why not just raise, rooms and meals or something like that? But,
Well, every time every tax proposal has pluses and minuses.
well,
Somebody's gonna
you're
win it.
proposing one,
Yeah. Well,
that has pluses and
yeah,
minuses. too.
I'm not sure. Is there a limit on the amount of, local option tax that you can raise? Can only do
Yeah,
like
so-
1%?
So I'm not an attorney. I would defer that to Tucker Anderson, but right now, everything is at 1%.
Yeah.
And my understanding is the only way to go higher than that is through the charter amendment process.
Yeah. So that's the issue. You'd have to do a charter, which is an option. Yeah. Thanks for raising that idea.
Representative Keiser.
Thank you. So this is for, you're thinking of gas stations and places like that where you would do it. So there are also bulk deliveries that go into large tanks that companies have and that type of thing. Are you envisioning this also to be for bulk deliveries into large tanks?
Just specifically for the gas stations, I think.
Okay.
Just within the municipality. We
Yeah.
don't have any bulk tanks.
Yeah, well, yeah, you do.
Brattleboro, do we?
Oh, gotcha. You don't know how many you've got. And I don't mean
Well,
to be dismissive.
that's an
Excuse
interesting
me.
point. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not something I know anything
Sorry.
about.
What will happen, I believe, is most diesel fuel is sold through bulk deliveries into customer-owned tanks. So you will be missing any of the volume or much of the volume that goes into diesel fuel. Just a side.
Well, it seems like there's lots of complications with this proposal, which seemed like a very simple solution.
Yeah, thanks for
And
carrying
but that's
the torch.
exactly why we legislate.
Good. So just a point.
Yeah, thank you.
Representative White.
Yeah, Representative Burke, I like this idea. But I do have concerns just hearing about maybe the complications of making a local option tax. And I was also kind of thinking along the lines of what Representative Couch was saying is, we could look at raising the gas tax and just say that additional raise is going directly back to all municipalities, which I think would just be working into the existing system. So it would make it, much less onerous to take on.
And raising the gas tax raises a whole lot of other red flags, right?
Were you asking me or just?
Looking for your confirmation, Mr. Chair.
I would certainly echo that if you want to talk about gas taxes, you'll get a lot of attention. Representative Casey.
We have more people in this room.
The governor said he would veto on gas tax.
Yeah,
That's what I heard.
that's a question, by all means, you ask, looking for the question. I think that for me, there's committee next door spends an awful lot of time understanding what is a good tax and bad tax. They put on a presentation last session that talks about whether there's a certain number, I see the nodding head, there was a lot of criteria to try to look down in terms of who is impacted and what it'll be used for, how is it collected, what's the administrative, how the equity of it. I can't remember exactly, but they spend a lot of time on that in terms of all the different pieces of what makes a good tax and a bad tax. So certainly this committee couldn't possibly answer all of that. It would likely spend a lot of time in there. There were two parts of it to me that I'm interested in a conversation at least versus the mechanics of how you collect it, but does a municipality have, whether it be through a perhaps climate mindset that wants to help reduce the amount of fossil fuel reliance and would want to continue to make gas more expensive perhaps, since it would reduce our emissions, and perhaps they would find other alternative methods. Can a municipality pursue some level of a climate action effort through taxation? That's an interesting question within that. Then also whether or not a community could we have a patchwork of one community versus another taxing actual gasoline? Do they have the ability to it? And then whether or not it could or couldn't happen. So I'm not sure I fully would say that we're not going to solve all that, but I am interested in the question of whether or not municipalities should have this ability or not, and then whether or not it could even work, but and what other options have municipalities had that they may or may not want to pursue in tax? What does it do to the state's ability to handle the gas tax increases? So those are some of the pieces that I think are conversation pieces. The bigger picture, can one municipality do it versus what I think Representative Pouch and Representative White are talking about, like we did it statewide and help the town highway funds and structures. That's different than what you're trying to do here, is where the
Narrowly.
municipal itself wants to.
But we do have the opportunity, I mean, municipalities do have already the opportunity to do local option taxes, which is sort of a patchwork. Not all municipalities do that. There is that precedent. Anyway, I appreciate the conversation, and this was really a conversation starter. And hopefully we can get some testimony if the chair is willing to sort of flesh out some of these questions and problems and see whether there's any possibility.
You hear a lot of reasons why we can't do it. I'm kind of curious about some of the reasons whether we should or shouldn't, not whether we can't, but whether we should. So thank you for bringing it. Does anyone else have some comments on this or questions? Representative.
I would think, and a penny's not much, but it does to a small degree put it at the gas stations at a disadvantage. I mean, technically, only a cent, probably not.
Oh, you mean because people would be saying I'm paying more if I drive over the
Some
line?
die hard, some people will drive, 10 miles to save, they'll step over $1 to save a dime,
People currently drive across the river to New Hampshire.
My experience is
There
they
you
don't
go.
even go across the street. It could be 10 cents difference and they don't
No.
care.
Sometimes
It is
it's just a simplicity of being able to pull in there, but
Yeah.
there is tightwads out there that would, no, not gonna do that.
And when I was having my senior moment, and I forgot the second part of what I was saying, is highlighting the issue that municipalities have very limited options when it comes to supporting their infrastructure. We saw a testimony this week that we only, as a state, are able to fund less than a third of town highway requests and 28% of town structures. That might have been vice versa. I don't know.
That's about 30%.
We're as a state only able to fund less than a third of what's being asked for. And if a municipality needs to fix something, they've got property taxes and a local option tax on sales, alcohol, rooms, and meals. What else can they do? And if you're not a town that has less than that sales activity, what else is the option? Property taxes or delay the project?
Or bond.
Base
Paid
sale?
for by property.
Okay,
I like
the option. I'm not saying it's a good option, but that is an option.
What can, some of what the committee, some of what the testimony would do is continue to highlight the issues that the town, from what I'm gathering, is desperate to address their infrastructure problems, and property taxes is one of their few options. What else do they have? Is this what I think our representative presented earlier, is there a tool in the toolbox that we don't have that we might consider making available to towns because they are under limited options?
And this committee has always been very concerned about our towns and trying to give them whatever advantage we can do for them.
And we are involved in a huge conversation about how we're going to fund state T funds. But in the subsection of that conversation is whether we are or not finding a way to help the towns in that. So if we even get the bigger picture, and I went off here by quite a bit, but so let's say that the governor's recommended plan were to happen and then the step down and that money were to come here, what have we done to help this issue of towns and municipalities who are getting less than a third of what they need? And I haven't heard anybody talk about resiliency planning, what I used to, was my grandfather would call, good maintenance and preparation. There isn't even any talk about the upgrade to larger structures, to larger culverts, and where that money would come from. All we've talked about is money to just get the T-fund to even current existing maintenance to keep, and what do we say, every day, the secretary says it's decaying out there, every day. But the money we're talking about only gets us to sort of maintaining that. There has no discussion about helping them and dealing with the next big flood. So that's my soapbox to end this conversation for today, but you're welcome to, since you're in that spot, to comment again.
And I think I mentioned to you yesterday in the presentation that we had from the Pew Research Center on infrastructure funding, and like to see if we could get them to do a presentation for this. Number of us were there in the room, and we had some thoughts about how with limited dollars we could collaborate more with other departments and et cetera. So
Thanks.
just to mention that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, so we're I have a couple of items for committee discussion on the next piece. I think we'll just go transition to that and spend a few minutes before we break for lunch. Next week, you're going to see on the agenda Caledonia Airport. Actually, I should pull out all of the pieces, but interestingly enough, 2 years ago, the committee put in the T-bill, and we passed in the legislature the T-bill to authorize the Secretary of Transportation to enter into agreement or pursue agreements to sell the Caledonia State Airport. And we put a 2-year time limit on his Secretary's effort to sell it, and it has not gone through, and it expires May 1st. So next week, we will hear from the agency on their request to add language to the T-bill. So I would to extend, there's going to be a request, and this is your heads up to that. There's going to be a request to extend that time frame, and we'll take a look at whether we think that is or is not the right way to go. There was a lot of discussion about that asset and where it's at, but I wanted to give you a heads up to that piece. And we also are still looking for a couple of spots to come in on T-fund language. And we are going to spend, there used to be in this committee, apparently, back to those ghosts that listen and those that are still here, say that we used to have a regional planning commission days, and we used to highlight the work done by regional planning commissions and hear what their concerns were related to roads and to infrastructure and their transportation advisory committees. And we are going to have a parade of regional planning commissions telling us what's going on throughout the entire state in their area, what their needs are, what their struggles are, what their successes are. And I think that it's an area we haven't heard from in a couple of years, at least.
Yeah, that's a little bit. Usually, I don't know if you want to do a joint hearing, but it was always.
Yeah, well, we're breaking them down into a lot of different.
Oh, okay.
We're going to have a lot of will be remote presentations, but we're going to hear from quite a few regional planning commissions on their feedback on what's going on in their world and the transportation world, anybody in transportation advisory committees. And my concern and the direction I'm sort of exploring in that particular testimony is, what else are we not doing? We're trying to fund to the bare minimum. And what we're losing at downtown projects and watching the pieces that impact on the tourism and the park. We've funded it to 5 million. And you see some unbelievable projects that happen for not a significant amount per project, but now that project's $500,000, and we added 6 or 7 new designees that you might as well not even have a project to divide up amongst 30 places.
Right.
It's sort of like the towns, they just got to go in the queue and wait their turn. That's not a lot to get those done. So anyway, that's what part of that, and also what's going on. What else are we not able to do because of the constraints of where we're at? That's sort of what I'm looking to talk about for next week. But Representative Casey.
That's an example of the lack of funding go into little towns. This is furthers it right there, but
And I appreciate that. When I also look at it, and there is a certain level of, we heard about the 91 bridge and the extra little bit of work that was done on the art side of it, and what it's done for tourism and interest in that piece. There's like at the Rotary and Waterbury, if those of you ever seen that backlit train piece, our budget doesn't allow us to do a whole lot of extra, but we're gonna do major projects like the Winooski Burlington Bridge, and I'm pretty sure we'd all want to agree that it should really have some level of flair to it when you're looking at downtown Winooski activity, commercial hub, and you're looking, how do we do that when we're in this situation? Topping that all off with an update from the agency on sort of their 10-year view and how do they view it on what they can and can't do, given the current sort of funding structure. So next week is sort of all about what else do we wish we could do and what aren't we doing and what are we skipping and what else do we want to hear, and opening up to a level that we haven't heard from in a couple of years. So that's what I wanted to at least announce. If there's comments or questions, I'm happy to take them. And I know there are some requests coming in that I would like to see you make them. It doesn't have to be a huge formal email, but just put it in there who you want and what you want to talk about. And but I know you've mentioned it, but I'm not. Make it easier. Put it in there and I will forward it along and help make that happen. But there we go. That's what the next week's plan is. That's where we're at. There's not a lot of T-bill this year, so it does open up some extra time on, and this is the first thing that I'm gonna do, but I'm open to what the next pieces are. And then we're gonna get started on some of the data we need to look at what's going on in the miscellaneous motor vehicles and vehicle inspections. So we will go and get a jump start on that if we don't have requests for other pieces.
do you ever love the trails?
I asked the League of Cities and Towns to come in on the trails and they said the appeal is happening and they think the appeal ruling is any day. If you remember, we got involved in
Yeah.
legal trails at the end especially during the committee conference. Representative Burke was in there, and Representative Parker, myself, and there was a lot of discussion about legal trails. We took testimony when I was out. And, the case resolved in the direction that a lot of people favored, not everybody. But then it was appealed and I was told the appeal is potentially being ruled on. So I have asked for that and they've asked to put it off. Right. Well, we could get something else, but that's.
I was just curious where that passed to.
Representative Parker.
Oh, in that discussion, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Perfect. Oh, sorry. Glad I could help. Okay. Anybody else? All right, then we're going to adjourn for.